My name is Isabella Bennett, and at 32, I thought I understood the rhythms of Golden Gate Regional Medical Center in Bridgeview, California. As the night shift charge nurse in our cardiac telemetry unit, I'd spent 4 years learning every sound the building made after midnight. The whisper of ventilation systems, the distant chime of elevator doors, the soft percussion of footsteps on polished floors. The hospital sat perched on the hills overlooking San Francisco Bay, its windows catching the first light of dawn like a beacon. From the 7th floor, you could see the Golden Gate Bridge on clear mornings, its towers emerging from the fog like ancient sentinels. It was a view that never lost its power to remind me why I'd chosen this profession, this place. But lately, something felt different in the familiar corridors of 7 West. It started with small things. Patient assignments that didn't quite add up when I cross-referenced them with our Epic system. Discharge times that seemed oddly clustered during certain shifts. The way conversations would pause when I approached the nurse's station, then resume with forced brightness. Marcus Johnson had been our per diem nurse for 18 months, picking up shifts when our regular staff called out sick or took vacation. He was reliable, competent, and had quickly become someone I trusted to handle our most complex patients. Marcus represented our unit in hospital-wide safety committees, his insights always thoughtful and data-driven. When administration needed feedback on new protocols, they often asked for his input. "Isabella, you're here early again," Marcus said one Tuesday morning as I arrived for my 7 p.m. shift. He was finishing up his day rotation, updating patient charts with the methodical precision I'd come to appreciate. "Traffic was light," I replied, settling into the chair beside him at the workstation. "How was the day?" "Smooth. Mrs. Chen in 712 is ready for step down, and the new admission in 718 is stable." He handed me the printed report sheets, our fingers brushing briefly. "Oh, and administration wants to see the monthly capacity metrics by Friday." I nodded, already mentally organizing the data I'd need to compile. Our unit's efficiency ratings had been consistently strong, something that reflected well on all of us. Marcus had been particularly helpful in streamlining our documentation processes, suggesting improvements that seemed to make everything run more smoothly. But as the weeks passed, I began noticing patterns that didn't quite fit. Patient flow numbers that fluctuated in ways that seemed disconnected from actual census. Discharge summaries that appeared in the system before I remembered processing them. Small discrepancies that individually meant nothing, but collectively created a persistent itch of dissent. The night shift brought its own clarity. In the quiet hours between 2 and 4 a.m., when most patients slept and the hospital settled into its deepest rhythm, I found myself reviewing reports with fresh eyes. The numbers told a story, but it wasn't the story I remembered living through each shift. Standing at the nurse's station one Thursday night, watching the city lights twinkle beyond the windows, I felt the weight of something unspoken pressing against the familiar comfort of routine. The silence that had once felt peaceful now seemed to hold secrets. The hurry that had been building for weeks crystallized into something more concrete on a rainy February morning. I'd arrived early for my shift change meeting with Marcus, finding him already at his usual workstation, fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "Morning, Isabella," he said, without looking up from the screen. "Just finishing the overnight reports." I settled beside him, noting the familiar scent of his coffee, always black, always from the vending machine on the 2nd floor. These small consistencies had become anchors in the demanding rhythm of hospital life. "How did the night go?" I asked, pulling up my own terminal to review the patient census. "Quiet, thankfully. 2 discharges around midnight, 1 new admission at 3 a.m. Marcus clicked through several screens, his movements automatic. "I've already updated the flow metrics for administration." Something in his tone made me glance at his screen. The numbers displayed there showed our unit at 78% capacity for the overnight hours, but I distinctly remembered seeing 85% when I'd checked the system from home around 2 a.m., a habit I'd developed to prepare mentally for busy shifts. "The capacity looks different than I expected," I said carefully. Marcus paused, his hand hovering over the mouse. "Different how? I thought we were running higher last night. Mrs. Patterson, in 714, wasn't discharged until this morning, and the Johnson family was still here with their father." "Oh, right." Marcus clicked back to a previous screen, then again. I had to make some adjustments. The system was showing duplicate entries for a couple of patients. You know how Epic can be with the overnight data sync? I nodded, though something felt off about his explanation. Epic's patient tracking system was robust, designed specifically to prevent the kind of errors he was describing. But Marcus had been working with these systems longer than I had, and his technical knowledge had always impressed me. Over the following days, I found myself paying closer attention to the details that had previously been background noise. Marcus's efficiency with the computer systems, which I'd always admired, began to seem almost too smooth. He could navigate between screens faster than anyone else on the unit, accessing reports and updating metrics with a speed that spoke of deep familiarity with the system's architecture. "Isabella, could you cover the safety committee meeting for me next week?" Marcus asked one afternoon as we overlapped during shift change. "I have a conflict with my per diem schedule at Valley General." "Of course," I replied, though I was surprised. Marcus rarely missed the safety meetings. They were one of his primary contributions to the hospital's quality improvement initiatives. "Thanks. The monthly capacity analysis will be the main agenda item. I've already prepared most of the data, so you'll just need to present the findings." He handed me a USB drive containing the presentation files. That evening, I reviewed the materials at home, impressed as always by Marcus's thorough analysis. The data showed our unit consistently operating at optimal capacity levels, with patient flow metrics that demonstrated efficient bed turnover and minimal bottlenecks. But as I cross-referenced his numbers with my own shift notes, discrepancies began to emerge. Dates when I remembered the unit being overwhelmed showed up in his analysis as smoothly managed. Nights when we'd struggled with staffing appeared in the data as fully resourced. The next morning, I arrived early and accessed the Epic system directly, pulling raw data from the same time periods Marcus had analyzed. The numbers told a different story, one of a unit that had been operating dangerously close to capacity, with several instances where patient safety protocols had been stretched thin. "Marcus," I said when he arrived for his shift, "I was reviewing the safety committee presentation, and I'm seeing some inconsistencies in the capacity data." His usual easy smile flickered for just a moment. "What kind of inconsistencies?" I showed him the printouts I'd made, pointing to specific dates and times. "These numbers don't match what I'm seeing in the raw system data." Marcus leaned over the papers, his brow furrowed in concentration. "That's strange. Let me check my source files." He turned to his computer, logging in with the swift keystrokes I'd watched hundreds of times. But instead of accessing the standard reporting modules, I noticed he navigated to a section of the system I wasn't familiar with: administrative tools that required elevated access privileges. "I think I see the issue," he said after several minutes of clicking through screens. "There was a system update last month that changed how the overnight census is calculated. I've been using the adjusted methodology, but the raw data still shows the old calculations." His explanation sounded plausible, delivered with the same confident tone he used when discussing clinical protocols. But something nagged at me, a sense that the pieces weren't fitting together as neatly as they should. That weekend, I found myself thinking about the conversation while grocery shopping, walking my dog, doing laundry. The mundane activities of life outside the hospital provided space for the grow. Marcus had been my mentor, my trusted colleague, someone whose judgment I'd relied on countless times. The idea that he might be manipulating data felt like questioning gravity itself. Monday brought a new development. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, our unit's medical director, stopped by during the evening shift change. "Isabella, I wanted to thank you for the excellent capacity management over the past quarter," she said, holding a printed report. "Administration is very pleased with how efficiently we've been operating." I glanced at the report, recognizing Marcus's formatting and analysis style. The data painted a picture of a unit running like clockwork, with patient flow optimized and resources utilized effectively. "I'm glad to hear that," I replied, though the words felt hollow. "In fact," Dr. Mitchell continued, "they're considering using our unit as a model for the new capacity management protocols they're rolling out hospital-wide. Marcus's data analysis has been particularly impressive." After she left, I sat at the nurse's station staring at the report. The numbers were beautiful, exactly what administration wanted to see, but they weren't real. They were a carefully constructed fiction that hid the reality of a unit pushed to its limits, staffed by dedicated professionals who made it work through skill and determination rather than optimal resource allocation. The weight of the discovery settled over me like a heavy blanket. Marcus hadn't just been manipulating numbers. He'd been systematically hiding capacity management failures that could have serious implications for patient safety and staff well-being. His position on the safety committees, his access to administrative systems, his reputation for technical expertise, all of it had been leveraged to create a false narrative that served someone's interests, but not the truth. Standing there in the familiar environment of the unit I'd come to love, surrounded by the quiet efficiency of evening shift routines, I realized that everything I thought I knew about our success had been built on a foundation of lies. The betrayal cut deeper than professional disappointment. It was personal, intimate, a violation of the trust that made healthcare teamwork possible. The question now was what to do with this knowledge, and whether I had the courage to own it. The next morning arrived with the weight of sleepless hours behind it. I'd spent the night rehearsing conversations, imagining scenarios, and questioning whether I had the strength to follow through. They sat in my bag like a stone. Screenshots, printed reports, and detailed notes documenting the discrepancies I'd discovered. Walking into Golden Gate Regional felt different now. The familiar hallways seemed longer, the overhead announcements more distant. Every colleague I passed made me wonder who else might know, who else might be complicit in the deception that had been unfolding under our noses. I found Chloe Martinez in the break room during the morning shift change, her scrubs still crisp, despite having worked through the night. She looked up from her coffee with tired but alert eyes. "Isabella, you look like you've seen a ghost," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "I need to talk to someone I trust," I said, settling into the seat. "And right now, that's a very short list." Chloe's expression shifted to concern. "What's going on?" I pulled out the printed reports, spreading them across the small table between us. "Marcus has been manipulating our capacity management data. These numbers he's been presenting to administration, they're not real." She leaned, studying the documents. Her finger traced the columns of data, and I watched her expression change as she began to understand what she was seeing. "These patient flow metrics," she said slowly, "they show we're operating at optimal capacity, but I know for a fact we've been running over census multiple times this month." "Exactly. He's been adjusting the numbers to hide capacity management failures, making it look like we're efficiently managing resources when we're actually stretched beyond safe limits." Chloe sat back in her chair, processing the implications. "The safety committees. He represents our unit on those committees. If he's presenting false data about our capacity management, then every decision they make based on that information is compromised," I finished. "Resource allocation, staffing models, safety protocols, all of it built on lies." The break room door opened and Eric Thompson from respiratory therapy walked in. Chloe quickly gathered the papers, but not before he caught sight of our serious expressions. "Everything okay?" he asked, moving toward the coffee machine. "Just reviewing some reports," I said, forcing a casual tone. After he left, Chloe leaned closer. "What are you planning to do?" "I have to report this, but I need to do it right. Marcus has relationships throughout this hospital, and his technical reputation gives him credibility I don't have." "You have credibility too," Chloe said firmly. "You've been here 3 years. You know this unit inside and out, and people respect your clinical judgment. But this isn't about clinical judgment. This is about data analysis and administrative systems, areas where Marcus is considered the expert." Chloe was quiet for a moment, then reached across the table and touched my hand. "I'll support you. Whatever you need to do, I'll back you up." The relief I felt was immediate and overwhelming. Having one person believe me, one person willing to stand with me, made the impossible seem merely difficult. "I think I need to start with Dr. Mitchell," I said. "She's the unit medical director, and she has direct relationships with administration." "Good choice. She's fair, and she cares about patient safety above politics." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine tasks that felt anything but routine. Every interaction with Marcus carried new weight. When he stopped by the nurses' station to discuss the upcoming safety committee meeting, I found myself studying his face for signs of deception, listening to his words for hidden meanings. "The administration is really excited about our capacity management success," he said, pulling up data on his tablet. "They want me to present our model to the other units next week." "That's quite an honor," I managed, the words tasting bitter. "It really validates all the work we've been doing to optimize our systems," he continued. "The data doesn't lie. We've found the sweet spot for efficiency and safety." The irony of his words, "the data doesn't lie," from someone who had been systematically falsifying that very data was almost too much to bear. I excused myself and walked to the supply room, needing a moment to collect myself. Dr. Mitchell's office was on the third floor, in the administrative wing that always felt removed from the clinical areas where the real work happened. I knocked on her door at 2 o'clock, as we'd arranged. "Isabella, come in," she said, looking up from her computer. "You sounded concerned on the phone." I sat across from her desk, the folder in my lap feeling heavier than it should. "Dr. Mitchell, I've discovered something that I believe compromises patient safety and violates hospital policy." Her attention sharpened immediately. "Go on." I opened the folder and began laying out the comma mess, explaining the discrepancies I'd found, the pattern of manipulation, and the implications for the safety committees and administrative decisions. Dr. Mitchell listened without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification or requesting to see specific documents. When I finished, she sat back in her chair, processing what she'd heard. "These are serious allegations, Isabella. You understand that?" "Yes, ma'am. I wouldn't bring this to you if I wasn't certain." "And you've verified this data independently?" "I have. I can show you exactly how to access the original reports and compare them to what Marcus has been presenting." Dr. Mitchell nodded slowly. "I need to involve risk management and potentially compliance. This kind of data manipulation could have regulatory implications." "I understand. I just want to make sure this is handled properly." "It will be. But I need you to understand that once we start this process, there's no going back. There will be an investigation, interviews, documentation. It's going to be uncomfortable for everyone involved." The weight of her words settled over me. I thought about Marcus, about the relationships that would be damaged, about the disruption this would cause to our unit. But then I thought about the false data being used to make decisions that affected patient care and staff safety. "I understand," I said, "but I can't pretend I don't know what I know." Dr. Mitchell picked up her phone. "I'm going to call Janet Williams in risk management. Can you stay for another hour to walk through this with her?" The next hour was a whirlwind of detailed questions, document copying, and formal statements. Janet Williams was thorough and professional, treating the allegations with the seriousness they deserved. She explained the investigation process, the confidentiality requirements, and the potential outcomes. "We'll need to secure the relevant systems and data immediately," she said. "And we'll need to interview other staff members who might have knowledge of these processes." "Chloe Martinez has been supportive," I said. "She's observed some of the same discrepancies. We'll speak with her. And of course, we'll need to interview Marcus Johnson as well." The formal sound of his full name in this context made the situation feel suddenly real and irreversible. There would be no going back to the comfortable working relationship we'd had, no pretending that trust hadn't been broken. By the time I left the administrative wing, word had somehow begun to spread through the hospital's informal communication network. I could see it in the glances from colleagues, the hushed conversations that stopped when I approached, the careful way people spoke to me. Marcus was waiting at the nurse's station when I returned to the unit. His usual easy demeanor was replaced by something harder, more guarded. "I hear you've been having meetings upstairs," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Hospital business," I replied, matching his tone. "Anything that affects our unit? I'm sure you'll be informed through appropriate channels." He studied my face for a moment, and I could see him processing the implications of my words, the formal distance I was maintaining. "Isabella, if there's something you want to discuss." "There isn't," I said firmly. "Not anymore." The rest of the shift passed in tense silence between us. Other staff members seemed to sense the change in atmosphere. The careful way Marcus and I avoided direct interaction, the professional courtesy that had replaced our previous easy collaboration. Chloe found me in the parking garage after our shift ended. "How did it go?" "It started," I said. "There's going to be an investigation. They'll want to talk to you." "I'm ready," she said. "This was the right thing to do, Isabella. Whatever happens next, you did the right thing." Driving home through the familiar streets of Bridgeview, I felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. The secret was out. The process had begun, and there was no controlling what would happen next. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe freely, like the weight of hidden knowledge had been lifted from my shoulders. The investigation would be thorough, uncomfortable, and potentially damaging to relationships I'd valued. But it would also be honest, transparent, and focused on the principles that had drawn me to healthcare in the first place. Sometimes, doing the right thing meant accepting that the comfortable status quo had to be disrupted in service of something more important.